Thank you to all of you for joining us today to hear a little bit more about Oxford Academia. And I'm really honored to be here. I'm just going to do an introduction of the main actor of Oxford Academia, my friend and colleague, Professor James Basker. And by introducing him, tell you a little bit of a story, a little bit what you'd be getting into. And then I'm going to let him introduce our amazing guests, Dr. Rodina Peachey, who's been with us for a long, long time, as well as Sami Ginzberg, who's been a dean with Professor Basker. So let me just tell you a little bit about Putney. Before I do, one might ask, how come you're talking about Oxford Academia when there's Paris Academia and Siena Academia? And that is true, but I just want to emphasize that today we're really going to focus on Oxford. We are happy to talk to you about both our program at the American University of Paris, which we call Paris Academia, and our program at the University of Siena, founded in 1240, one of the oldest universities in Italy. And just give me or any of us a call anytime, and we can fill you in on that. I should mention the first unit of Paris Academia is full. There is still some very limited space in the second unit. There is a bit of space left in University of Siena. So I'm happy to speak with you about them, talk to you about them, call me anytime. It is my passion to tell you more about them. But today we're going to focus on Oxford. And I should start by just, if you flip the next slide, telling you a little bit about Putney. So Putney was founded by my parents. That's my 91-year-old mother. My dad has passed away. They're an interesting story in the respect that my dad was of the generation World War II that at 17 years old went off to fight Hitler. That was his introduction to the world. And my mom was raised in occupied Holland and obviously grew up under the occupation of World War II. So needless to say, they were both significantly influenced by the war. And they were high school educators, teachers who really got this idea 71 years ago. Don't forget, that's before commercial aircraft. And the students who've been in those years, you can see this picture on the top left, they used to go back and forth by ship to Oxford, to Cambridge, to any program they were doing. It would be 8 days over, 8 days back. It was a different era. No cell phones. You used to have to send a telegram to communicate back home. So all I'm saying is what they really were passionate about was changing students' lives in the summertime, taking summer vacation and turning it into summer education. So there are about 30 of us that work out of an old dairy barn up here in Vermont to this day and have been for 71 years, making this magic happen. So they had programs, my parents, at both Oxford and Cambridge in those years. Then came along Jim Basker, who founded something that you might have heard of over the years called Oxbridge Summer Programs. Jim is an extraordinary educator, and his story, to tell it briefly, is that he went to Harvard, where I also do some teaching, where he got his BA, but then he was selected to be a Rhodes Scholar at both Cambridge and Oxford. He got his master's and his PhD there. He's still involved with the Rhodes Scholar, Rhodes House, and the Rhodes Scholar organization. In fact, he helped to select those scholars. And Oxford became, I would say, his life's passion. I think he credits, and he can speak for himself, his genuine commitment to education. And I mentioned that I do some teaching at Harvard, other places. I have never met a more inspiring educator than Jim Basker. When he started these programs, really his goal was to create a educational experience in the summertime that challenged students intellectually, allowing them to grow emotionally in ways that you just cannot get in an American or international classroom in high school. He has been teaching for the last, he taught at Oxford, he taught at Harvard. He's been for the last 30 years a professor at Barnard and Columbia University, where he's the Gilman-Lehrman professor. He heads the Gilman-Lehrman Institute in New York. He's the director, which educates over 28,000 students all over the world in both civic and history. He's truly a phenomenon. So once he started these programs, they were so good that my parents stopped offering we at Putney stopped offering the general program at Oxford, hoping that they would go to Jim, frankly. And we ran specific programs. For example, we had a partnership for years with New York Times called New York Times Student Journeys, where we take New York Times journalists, put them at Oxford with journalism students. So, but we basically left that one to Professor Basker because he did it so well. The obvious question is, why was it so good? And the answer is, Jim was able and continues to be able, as you're going to see shortly, to get a level of faculty that I say the rest of us couldn't get. Why? Because he was able to turn to his colleagues who have been teaching at Oxford, at Cambridge, at University of London, all over the system, and say to them as friends, hey, you've got to teach this European history course this summer because you're the best European history instructor I know. And they would do it, they would love it, and they would return year after year. So that's the magic of anything. The second reason is his passion for education, his charisma, his ability to communicate with high school students in a way that most adults can't, and his ability to create magic within a community that's more than just taking courses. It inspires people to be lifelong learners. Just yesterday, I was reading an email from a student who went on Jim's program, is currently it was from the grandfather of this kid who sent his student with Jim 7 or 8 years ago. He got his BA, and he's now been admitted as a Rhodes Scholar to Oxford, and obviously blames his journey on the influence of Professor Jim Basker and this program. So the obvious question is, well, why isn't Jim still doing that? The answer in short is, Jim got so busy doing his thing at Columbia and Barnard and the other things that he's supposed to do in life that he transferred Oxbridge summer programs to another larger educational organization. That didn't work out. And we got together and said, let's create Oxford Academia so that Professor Basker can continue to create the magic at Oxford for high school students and other campuses that he has created for over 30 years. So I'm really honored today to introduce my friend, my colleague, who I believe runs the most inspiring program for students at Oxford, in Paris, in Italy, at the University of Siena that one can find. And it's a real honor to be collaborating with him. We've had collaborations at Putney, as many know, with the National Geographic, the New York Times. We currently collaborate with the Smithsonian Student Summers, with Harvard, where we run a climate change program with the School of Public Health, with Columbia University. But I've got to say, you're not going to find someone as inspiring as Jim Basker. Parents sometimes ask me, what's the difference between Oxford Academia and other programs like it? And I say this, listen, it's kind of like imagining Macbeth without Macbeth. Imagining an incredible educator who starts a program, creates a program, runs a program, and suddenly they're not there, they're somewhere else. So they're at Oxford Academia. It is Professor Jim Basker. It's an honor to introduce my friend and my colleague. Jim, take it away. And I'm going to click off and come back in the question and answer session because I don't want to do anything to interrupt your presentation.
Peter, thank you for those lavishly kind words and for the chance to talk with people who've tuned in today about Oxford Academia, which I am just thrilled to get a chance to discuss. And I'm really thrilled also to have two of my colleagues here whom you'll hear from later. Sami Ginzberg, who is a teacher, an experienced teacher in New Haven, Connecticut, but who has worked on it as a dean on our program and is beloved of the students. And Dr. Rodina Peachey, who's actually joining us from London. She'll say more about that because she's just finished a shift in her hospital and teaches medicine for us. But I want to start by trying to share some sense of the specialness of Oxford as a place, because it is an absolutely unique and magical place, not only an 800-year-old university, but the seat of kings. There is actually a castle, or the ruins of a castle in Oxford that dates back to just after the Norman conquest, and has been a part of the fabric of the city. Kings have been born in Oxford. Kings have sought refuge there during times of civil war. So there's an historical pedigree that's unmatched. But if you look at those images we're seeing just now, my old college, where I was a graduate student, is Christ Church on the left. It is one of the 38 colleges that make up Oxford University. Oxford is not a university in the American sense, which we're used to seeing one campus. Its constituent bodies are independent colleges that have their own foundations and charters and physical premises, some of which are the most beautiful grounds in that world. The scene on the left is where Cardinal Wolsey cleared away in the 1500s an entire neighborhood to create what was then the largest college in Oxford, the grandest. He fell from power and King Henry VIII took over and refounded it. And that is why the cathedral is at Christ Church today, and it is considered a royal college. On the right, you can see an image of the outside of the Sheldonian Theater, built in 1663 by Christopher Wren. He was then a relatively unknown mathematics and engineering fellow who just happened to have a genius for architecture. And he built one of the most extraordinary buildings in all of Europe, one of his first masterpieces. Our students will see the Sheldonian, I think, during one of our opening ceremonies, as well as perhaps when they visit to attend concerts. Those busts, by the way, on the pedestals outside, no one knows who they represent. There are traditions that they represent emperors or just angry figures from the gods, but still to this day, no one knows who they represent. If we move the slides forward, we're going to see some other images of Oxford, just to give you a sense of the magic of the place. Here, I love peering through a kind of magical arch like this. That's actually the underside of an imitation of the Bridge of Sighs, which the original of which is in, of course, Venice. This was built in about 1900, connecting two blocks of Hartford College, which is right in the center. Through the arch on the right, we can see the Clarendon building, built in the early 1700s with the profits from Clarendon's History of the Late Rebellion. It was for a time the center of Oxford University Press, but that outgrew that building long ago in the 1800s. It is today a scene of classrooms, but in the right-hand side, the ground floor, the current Vice Chancellor, Louise Richardson, has established her offices there. She's the first female Vice Chancellor in 800 years history at Oxford. In the center is the Sheldonian, another angle that you're seeing it from. It's the official ceremonial theater. Since the 1660s, it's where all official university events take place. Matriculation, when students sign on as candidates for degrees, and all the graduation and degree ceremonies. I received my doctorate in that building. I think Rodina received a degree at some point earlier in her life in that place. And for every Oxford student, it is a very special, magical arena. Let's move on to a couple of other images, if we can. Here you'll see a typical quadrangle in the interior of the colleges. I mentioned there are 38 colleges. Each of them has its own chapel and its own dining hall. They will have manicured lawns. They will have Porter's Lodge, which is the gateway into the college, the complex of buildings where the students live. Sometimes some of the fellows live there. They all have offices there. There will be a junior common room, a middle common room for graduate students, and then a senior common room for the faculty to relax, to read, and sometimes to have lunch in. And in the background, you can see that Oxford is in a kind of outside the city, a very beautiful rural environment. You can just make out some of the rolling hills in the far distance that surround Oxford. Our students will go on walking trips to Port Meadow, a very ancient grazing ground on the edge of Oxford that is mentioned in, I think, the earliest records of Oxford, even before the university was there, and to Iffley on the Thames River. It's a beautiful area to be in. Let's go to a couple of other images, please. Here's University College. It is one of the three that we will have our students resident in this summer. Our students are going to live like Oxford University students. That is to say, a student is typically resident in one college and may have a teacher there, but more often we'll have classes and teachers in other colleges and in other buildings in Oxford. So students typically go from one college to another or to some of the lecture blocks or libraries around the city. You can see on the left one of the main walkways in University College. which strikes many of us as an unusual name, but it was, according to history, the very first Oxford College to be founded in 1249. So it is approaching its 800th birthday in just about 25 years. And it's a wonderful and beautiful place, as you can see. On the right is the kind of memorial that gives texture to Oxford. Every building, every quadrangle, really every stone in the street speaks to you of history and all of the incredible people who flowed through Oxford. The very moving memorial, if you look carefully, in the white alabaster, there's a body lying horizontally. And that's meant to represent Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was a graduate. Well, he was not a graduate of University College. He was actually expelled after one term there because he was an outrageous, iconoclastic intellectual. He wrote a scandalous pamphlet on the necessity of atheism, which the authorities expelled him for writing. But later he became one of the most famous romantic poets. And years after he died in a boating accident in Italy, and his body therefore washed up on the shore. And that's what is represented there in the horizontal position of his body. Years later, the college, of course, had come to its senses and wanted to revere his memory and probably wished they hadn't expelled him those many years before. This memorial is inside University College. And the lines of poetry that you'll see up around, you can't quite read in this slide, were actually lines that Shelley himself composed in memory of John Keats, because many will know that John Keats died very young at 24, and Shelley had commemorated him in a famous poem. Here, those lines of Shelley are reinstalled in his memory in this really very moving memorial. If we go on, you'll see a couple of other images I think that show you something else. I mentioned that we'll be in 3 colleges. We're going to be in University College, which is the oldest, founded in 1249. We're going to be in Worcester College, which is kind of middle-aged college, founded in 1715, although it incorporates buildings that go back to the 13th and 14th century. There had been a Benedictine monastery on that site, which later gave way to Worcester College. And then we're going to be in St. Antony's College, which is a modern college founded right after World War II. It's in the idealistic spirit. I mean, Peter talked about his parents and their reaction to the experiences of the Holocaust and World War II. Well, Oxford University had such a reaction, and St. Antony's College was founded as part of that reaction because it's a place that specializes in international relations. There are 7 different schools that specialize in Africa or in Latin America or in European or in Asian studies within St. Antony's. It's produced amazing graduates over time, including Thomas Friedman, the Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times, the recent president of Colombia, and countless ministers of dozens of countries all over the world. But the goal was to make it a truly international college that brought together students from all over. And indeed, in the 450 students who are in St. Antony's today, they represent more than 65 different nationalities. It's a very cosmopolitan college. I'm showing you another modern building near St. Antony's, which is one of the most recent constructions. This is the Blavatnik School of Government, which many of the students at St. Antony's do their degrees in, lectures, or use the libraries. But I'm showing you this to give you a sense that Oxford is a huge mixture of architectural styles, some of them 700 years old, some of them less than 2 years old. This building was completed just as COVID was closing things down for a short period. And it is a place that our students will visit while they're in Oxford and enjoy very much. Let's move ahead, Kiki, thank you. So here is a kind of overview of the curriculum. We, as Peter mentioned, offer courses that are things that students can't do in high school. They take students beyond the normal curriculum and usual courses available there. And I guess it's appropriate we put those courses opposite a view of the Bodleian Library. This is the Duke Humphreys room, which is part of the Bodleian Library, where I actually did my work as a graduate student. Our students will get a chance, those who are in literature and in creative writing courses to do a private tour of the Bodleian, which is one of the most extraordinary libraries in the world, founded in 1600 and holding collections that are, well, just beyond description, as you can imagine. On the right, you see the courses listed. All of them are available both as a major course and as a minor. So at the center of our program, students choose a major, a subject they really want to throw themselves into. They'll have that major course 3 hours a day from 9 to 12, plus some project work outside those hours. In a minute, I'm going to turn to Rodina and ask her to talk about what she does in the medicine class, and maybe even say a word about what molecular medicine means as distinct from medicine. But you can see here, students can take anyone as a major, but they can also take a second course from this list as a minor, and they can do any two they wish. So we do not pigeonhole students and say you're only in the humanities or only in the sciences. You could do medicine as your major and take creative writing as your minor. You could do war and world history as your major and do engineering as your minor. Each student fashions a unique curriculum for themselves, the two subjects that they most want to do while they're in their session at Oxford. If we move ahead, I want to talk a little bit about what is the core of the program. I've talked about Oxford, the place, and its physical and historic beauty and cultural resources. I've suggested the courses are important, but there is nothing more important than the faculty. And here you'll see images of some of our teachers. I wish I could tell you in depth about them all. Predrag in the upper left is a professor of medicine up in St. Anthony's in Scotland. Abigail Branford and Josh Knott are Rhodes Scholars, one of them teaching international relations, the other teaching law. Max Lau is a historian from Oxford who teaches our War and World History class. Daniel Marshall is a former British policeman who did his DPhil in criminology and justice and has come back as an academic, loves teaching the students in our program. Rob Schessel is an entrepreneur and businessman who created businesses in Eastern Europe and now in China. And he doesn't need the summer work, I think, but he loves teaching. So he comes and works with the kids. And I could tell you about all the people on the screen here, but I want to turn right now to my colleagues because they really are the lifeblood of the system. I try to find teachers who are not just masters of their subject, but who care about students. They have imaginative approaches to teaching, and importantly, they model a passion for their subject. So I'd love to turn first to Rodina, who's joining us. And I have to thank you, Rodina, because I know you're just finishing a shift at your hospital in London. But would you tell everyone a little about yourself and what it's like to teach and take the medicine class?
Thank you, Professor Basker. I would love to. And yes, you are very right. I have just finished my shift, so I will both apologize and explain for the background that you see from me today. I am in University College Hospital in London, in central London, where I'm currently doing a fellowship in neonatal critical care. So my background is that I'm an anesthesiology and adult intensive care doctor, currently doing a specialist fellowship year, doing intensive care, but for very small patients. So neonates in incubators is what I'm doing at the moment. I spent 4 wonderful years studying, living, exploring the world of Oxford. It is indeed a unique place, like Professor Basker said. And I did my pre-med undergraduate degree there in biochemistry, where I specialized in a lot of molecular medicine. I did genetics and developmental biology of the immune system and the musculoskeletal system. That took me on some international travels to Vienna to do some research in the Institute of Molecular Pathology there. And then I proceeded on to medical school and chose my specialty of, as I said, anesthesiology and intensive care. I've been very heavily involved in COVID efforts over the last 2 years and still do. And I'm developing a very keen interest in teaching and particularly instruction for resuscitation. So in the most critical care situations that humans can find themselves in, teaching others the skills to save lives. And that is one of the very few things that one of the many things that I will be bringing to the course of medicine and molecular medicine with the course this year. So it's a great challenge to teach this course, but so much fun because I get 2 weeks to try to show you the huge breadth of medicine. So the course that I tend to do really tries to touch upon that breadth. And we look at a lot of different specialties: emergency medicine, family practice, genetics, oncology, surgery, anatomy. Or we cover as many as we can in the short time frames that we have. I get guest speakers in to give us an opportunity to have expertise in a particular area. It's all very well having breadth, but the students that we have on the program, they're thirsty for more knowledge. So we get a few opportunities to have very in-depth experts coming to talk and really delve into a subject in depth. One of the joys about doing this program in Oxford, there's so much history of medicine rooted in Oxford. The discovery of penicillin, for example, the lab that happened in is the William Dunn School of Pathology in Oxford. And we get to go and visit that place in person. So I really try to cover as much as I can to demonstrate my passion and enthusiasm for the world of medicine. And it is always immensely joyful and so very rewarding. And I hope anyone who's there picks my class to do.
Rodina, thank you. That's wonderful. And you're so typical of the teachers we have on the program. I want to shift the perspective for just a minute because it's terribly important also to think about the students who come on this program. And that's why it's great to have Sami Ginzberg with us, who's an experienced dean. I should say that the deans are the people, experienced teachers who know these kids well and are used to working with them and care about them. They oversee not just the pastoral care of being in residence, but they organize the extracurricular activities, they coordinate the timetable, they make sure the kids are all healthy and happy and feel well looked after. And I'd love it, Sami, if you would say a word about your own background as a teacher, and then a little bit about, from your point of view, what the kids are like and what their life is like outside the classroom in Oxford.
I would be delighted. Thank you, Jim. So hi, everyone. I am a public school teacher, and I'm delighted to return back to Oxford this summer. I was a program dean in 2019, pre-COVID, and I can say with full confidence that everything that Jim and Peter shared with you is not an exaggeration. There's nothing hyperbolic about how truly magical it is to spend one summer in Oxford. And I know that I'm really excited to go back. And I guess what's most important to share with you is I think the role that I serve is really important because I was told when I took the job, you are the mama bear. You are the person who not only will make sure that everything is running smoothly in the program office, but you are there for the kid that might be feeling a little bit homesick. You are there for the kid that might need to go to the doctor. You are there for the kid that needs to go to the pharmacy and they don't know where to find it or what to do, and you're going to give them that direction. So I do a little bit of everything, and I really just make sure that the social and emotional needs of the kids that are on the trip are met, so that they can show up to their classes at just like their full best selves and be sponges to absorb all the knowledge. And I will say, I think that your students will not have one moment off. Like they will need to make sure they get enough hours of sleep every night, because they're going to be so overstimulated in the best way by how much activities are going on a daily basis. So a typical day, students can wake up and they will have a morning pamphlet that will post, a little flyer that will tell them all of the activities that are going to be offered that afternoon and evening. And there's everything from sports that they could play to yoga class to game night, movie night, We take them on walking tours. I know that there's a ghost tour. I'm not a I don't like to be scared, so I never went on it, but it was like a big attraction that a lot of kids wanted to go on, and we had to offer it multiple times to make sure that everyone got to go who wanted to go. There's punting. There's a TED Talk experience where professors along with the kids get an opportunity to like take the stage for 10 minutes and share about something that they're really passionate about. I remember we did a fashion show. There was a color war. Like, I'm telling you, we jam pack as much fun as possible into the time that we have.
Sami, that's great. Thank you for remembering all of those rich activities that happen. And as you can see here, there's a typical daily schedule, pretty much as Sami suggested it. With 3 afternoons a week, the minor seminars will happen right after lunch, but every afternoon there are a choice of activities, sometimes guest speakers or workshops or walking tours. And of course, kids can do as you see them doing here. They can sit in the quadrangle and have conversations with each other. They can do their reading or think about the poem they're writing or the engineering problem they're solving or the business plan they're cooking up for their business class. Our approach to learning is very experiential. There are no final exams. There are no long essays, but kids are doing things every day in terms of mastering pieces of the subject that interest them and sharing those pieces back with the other students. Often, I get asked about the students, and I think probably the students in the audience are thinking, well, what are the kids like? I can say briefly, based on many years of experience, and as Rodina has already indicated, I think Sami feels the same. The kids are really the reason that I come back every year. They're extraordinary. You can imagine this. These are students who are self-selecting because instead of wanting to go lie on the beach or just hang out at the tennis club, which is fine, these are kids who want to go study law. They want to learn about business. They want to do medicine. They want to do archaeology. They want to do sustainable planning or war and world history. They have intellectual interests or topics that they want to know more about. And so they're self-starters and they bring enormous energy and curiosity. The typical student in our program is also identified by one specific marker. Almost all the kids in our program are the only student from their school. These are kids who are brave enough or independent-minded enough to say, hey, I don't need to hang with the pack. I want to go to this place and be with these brilliant teachers. I want to experience the history and culture and scientific knowledge of this institution. And I don't need to have other pals from school with me. In fact, I don't mind if I don't know a single other person when I arrive. And students find very quickly that the other students who've come are just like them. One of the joys for many kids is when they settle into their seminar, they look around and they see not just kids who are going to be with them freshman year at the very good colleges they all go on to, but kids who are going to be their friends for a long time because they share their interests, they share their values, and they're really neat people. And I think that's just a kind of epiphany that happens for every student when they come on this program. But it's something we can talk about and certainly put you in touch with others who've been there in the past. I think we should move the slides forward slightly to suggest some of the other areas that we're going to talk about and open ourselves up to questions as well. I've touched on the faculty, I've touched on the place, and we've touched on the student body. But I think we should open ourselves up to questions now because we have Sami and Rodina here, and I'm certainly happy to chime in. And Kiki, if you have questions, tee them up for us.
Yes, well, you just started to touch on it. One of the questions is, what are the other students like? Is everybody going to be very smart? And is my child going to make friends?
Rodina, would you say something about your perception and then Sami of those kids?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. Every year I am involved. Every year I meet students that come on these programs that meet and make friends for life. It happens every year. And it's exactly as Professor Basker said, you come and meet with minds and young minds that are like your own. And that is the thing that ties you together. And for the rest of your life, you will be bouncing ideas, educational and exploratory ideas of these people. And it connects people across the globe. There are friends that are friendships that are made that cross continents. And all the students come with an enthusiasm to learn. I think that's one of the other things that ties them all together and is the common theme. And it's a very magical combination if you put those kinds of students in a classroom with teachers that want to teach and want to share their knowledge in a beautiful setting and environment like Oxford. There's something so conducive to learning and having experiences that impact you lifelong.
Sami, tell me your perception of the students. You saw kids across all subjects. What were they like?
Yes, and well said. I'm just going to echo what you shared, Rodina, and add that I think what's unique about this experience is that there will be so many different opportunities for you to connect with people. You're going to meet kids in transit. You're going to meet kids in your classes. You're going to meet kids in the dormitory. You are going to meet kids on the ghost tour. So that there are so many different pockets, so many different experiences that you'll share together that could be different. So you might meet your best friend in your minor class and you only see them for a couple hours in the day. But you'll then decide, oh, let's go play basketball together later. And then someone on their floor who they met will bring together someone else. And then you find your people. And one of the things that I remember also being really special is there were no cliques. It was not a cliquey program at all, that everyone was so gracious and would invite someone to have a seat at the table at any time. People were so inclusive and excited to connect with one another. I think that you'll have, if you go on the experience, you'll get there and you might be jet lagged and you might be overwhelmed, but you'll find very, very quickly that there will be people who you will just feel very seen and feel very understood by, even if they have grown up in a completely different place than you. It's just so special.
Sami, I love the way you put that the kids will find their people, which is a little bit like what happens when people go off to college. And to that, I would add that in my experience, looking back over so many years, many students also find themselves in a certain way. They find a subject they didn't know that they cared about as much or didn't know about, and it becomes part of them. They find that they can function at this level. They can be in a seminar conversation with Rhodes Scholars and with doctors like Rodina Peachey and with other bright kids, and they're not intimidated. It's actually quite fun. They can work and think and talk at this level. They know that they can be in a university environment and find the joy in it, which I think is what I have to say is why I've been an academic for more than 30 years, the joy of the people and the ideas that you get to immerse yourself in. So I think people find their people, but they also find out something about themselves. It gives them confidence, gives them new ideas and new modes of engagement when they go to the university and they're on their own in the future.
The only thing I might add to that eloquence about who is there, who are the kids, is who we've actually accepted, because the programs have been formed. We have very few spaces left. And the answer is, it's an amazing group of students who are incredibly diverse. They're from all over the country, some international students, but mostly from the United States and Canada. But we've accepted we have one student who is being recruited for college football, but is really into tech and engineering, and has managed to navigate his schedule in terms of football training and all that, so that he can come to Oxford Academia because he wants to use the brain. We have other students who are into music, other students who are into theater, other students who are into technology and medicine, and you name it. It's going to be one of the most diverse group of really bright students that you've ever been with, who, as Jim mentioned, share one thing in common. They don't know anybody, with very few exceptions. So they all want to make really lifelong bonds, and they do. So it's a pretty remarkable group of students that we've accepted.
Thanks, Pete. Some more questions in the chat. This one asks, are we assessed? So are the students going to be graded and quizzed in their courses, or how does that work in the seminars?
No, they're not going to be evaluated. Of course, they're going to contribute. So teachers like Rodina ask students to comment on a disease that concerns them, or raise a question, perhaps debate an issue in class, and so on. But we're not into traditional grading and traditional assessment. There are no final exams or anything like that. But there will be comments compiled by each teacher on the student's strengths at the end of the program, and students can carry those or will receive those afterwards. But we do not fall into the traditional cookie cutter grades and assessment mode of school back home.
Thank you. Are students expected to bring their own computers, or will they be taking notes with paper and pen? And what other kind of technology should they expect to bring?
Bring your technology. bring laptops if you have them, or obviously your other technology. We should point out there are obviously times where we limit the use of technology. You need it for your courses, for your research, for much of the stuff you're going to be doing. So we definitely need it. But obviously group meetings, dinners, extraordinary dinners that we all have together, times where we just want to really focus on each other, we ask you to put it away, but bring it for the academic reasons, as well as, when you do have an occasional quiet moment, if you want to text home or whatever you're going to do, go for it.
In honor of that scene from the Bodleian Library that is up there with some leather-bound books, and speaking on behalf of the 18th century, where I write with a quill pen still, I want to say any student who wishes to use the old technology, that is paper and pen, is very welcome to do that. And whenever you're around me, you feel no shame in flourishing paper and pencil.
How many people are in each seminar? Is there a cap?
That's a great question. I should have mentioned that. I apologize for not touching on it. Yes, each of these is a small seminar, no more than 15 students in a class, and sometimes as few as 8, 10, 12. But we do focus on very small groups and close instruction. You have good access to each of your teachers. It's key to what we do.
And is there a dress code for students?
You can dress in the Harry Potter style if you wish. No, we're quite casual. Of course, there might be occasions where there's an appropriate level of dress. I apologize for this unanswered phone in the background. Where if we're visiting a chapel or a cathedral, for example, we might not be in short shorts and t-shirts, but there is no expectation of a formal dress code. There might be a formal dinner or two where people might dress up a bit and put on, a dress or skirt and a jacket. But in general, it's the same dress code as you would have on a college campus in the United States.
And we might just add to that, once you've been through admissions and accepted, we don't leave anything to your imagination, including what to bring and how to bring it. So included in that will be, something to look decent when we have a formal dinner, but most of the time we look just like you do at school.
Great. And this is a question about picking a major and a minor. What do you recommend?
Oh, I love that question. And one of the reasons I love that question is because that's the mark of a student who's perfect for our program, because they're focused on what course to choose. The major class should be something, can be anything. We don't have prerequisites, so you don't have to have prior experience in medicine to take a medicine class. You don't need to know anything about the law to take a law class. These are precisely to give you that exposure. But as your major, you should choose something you really want to throw yourself into. And you're going to be in it 3 hours a day, 6 mornings a week. You're going to have projects and other kids. For your minor, I said you can take any other subject, but you can be experimental there because you're only going to have 3 afternoons for a couple of hours each week. And so be experimental. I don't know anything about creative writing, but this is my chance to, write poems and short stories, and I'm going to give it a try. That's the attitude you could have for your minor class. But I promise you, the quality of teaching and the quality of people you're going to have as your teachers in all these subjects is outstanding. I pick the teachers according to the people I want to learn from and talk with. And they all light me up about their subjects, and they will you too.
I just want to add one thing to Jim's seminar responses, which is we really encourage students to do 4 weeks. And that allows you to choose 2 majors and 2 minors. We encourage it so much that if you look carefully, we offer a really steep discount for the second unit. It's like $2,400 off the second tuition, because we feel so strongly about not only you're having this opportunity to broaden your horizons in more than just 2 weeks, but also because we really want you to be able to dig into 4 subjects and build a community where you build friendships. And of course, the longer you're there, the more intense those connections become. So it's worth mentioning that through the tuition structure, we care so much about your spending a month there if you can, that we really reduce the financial challenge so that you can do that. I should have also mentioned when I was talking about the American University of Paris and University of Siena, that you can mix and match these programs. There are some students who are going to be coming to Oxford and then going to the University of Siena to do farm to table or Italian language or whatever. There are students who are going to be coming to Oxford and then going to the American University of Paris to improve their French, to dig into French cuisine, to dig into the life of the American University of Paris. So you can mix and match these programs. When you do that, there's a $1,000 discount because we don't want to charge you our $800 overhead and our $200 application fee twice. So biggest discount if you double up on Oxford. There's also a discount, a smaller discount, if you do 4 weeks mix and matching the Oxford Academia programs.
And Peter, there's another question. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing, which is for any kids who are looking at this list of courses and worried because it's not leaping out to them, they're not sure which they want to take. Touching on Peter's point that you can do 2 different majors, 2 different minors over 4 weeks. The typical student on our program, the hardest decision they have is to choose among 4 or 5 subjects that interest them. Which are they going to take? So it's a great strategy to maximize your choices and stay for a month.
Speaking of, this question asks, if my child is there for the first 2 weeks, can they sign up for the second session while they're there?
Great question. So this is what happens. You get there and you're in the first session, and you know how it is the first 24 hours, you don't know anybody, no one knows you. It can be a little bit rocky in that first 24 hours. Sometimes not, but sometimes it is. Second day, things are going smoothly. By the end of the first week, you're like, wow, this is great. By the end of the second week, you're like, I don't want to go home. So what happens? Around day 10, you go running to your dean or to Jim or whoever it is and say, can I stay the second session? And the answer is, assuming this is true, we love you, we really want you to, but we don't have space in the seminars and or in our residences. So the answer is, if you try to do that, we will try, but we often fail because we have a limited number of spaces in our seminars and spaces in the program. So we'll give it our best, but trust me on this one. If you are a normally adjusted high school student who's high achieving and does well with other people, you're going to wish you were there for a month. Make the decision now, and you're much more likely to have it actually work. So we'll try, but we certainly can't guarantee it.
Perfect.
That's great. That wraps up our Q&A, unless anybody has any other questions for us. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's April, and that seemed to come upon us quickly. I know we've all been a bit distracted by the tragedy in the Ukraine, and some folks have been waiting to see what happens there. I just want to address that directly. Putney's been sending programs for 71 years. Professor Basker has been working with students at Oxford for almost 40. In both cases, we've always brought everybody home alive, happy, and ready to do it again. So our first priority is student safety. We treat each student like they were our own. And we would never go forward in a situation that we thought was not 100% safe. Having said that, we are fully confident that we will be able to go forward this summer with the same safety that we have in the past at Oxford. So I just want to say, if this is something that you're excited about doing, don't hesitate. The first unit is almost full. The second unit will be filled shortly. So if it's something they're excited about, submit your application. It's easy. Just go online, hit apply now, choose your major and your minor, make your deposit. We then will hold a space for you, assuming that you're going to be accepted. In other words, we don't give your space to someone who applies after you, but whose teachers are more prompt. The student gets their essays to us more promptly. So at that point, if you go forward, if you choose to go forward, hit apply now, fill out the form, make your $700 deposit. We will then write back to you tomorrow morning or soon from admissions and say, yes, we have space. Yes, we have space in your seminar choices. Let's hope. And if that's all true, we're then going to ask you for the emails of 2 teachers that know you well at school. You'll write a short essay. We'll put that all together. If we cannot accept you, we will refund all of your money, credit your credit card. If we can accept you, we go forward together. But my real message is, this is an extraordinary program. It's late. If it's something you're excited about, get rocking, and hopefully we can make it all work.
I want to add one word that doesn't have to do with applications, and thankfully Peter and his incredible staff handle all of that beautifully. And sometimes they do forward questions to me. I'm happy to talk with people, but I wanted just to say to everybody who's on the call today, I will be physically in Oxford for the duration of both sessions of the program. And any of you who come, who have seen me on this call, I hope you'll introduce yourself the first day when we're together. If any of the parents on this call are planning to visit, whether to drop their student off or to pick them up at the end or to visit in the middle, please ask with the deans like Sami or the teachers to be introduced. I'd love to see you, and maybe if I have time, give you a little walking tour of Oxford myself. But I'll be there working hands-on with the students, doing some walking tours and guest presentations and just hanging out for the whole month. And I hope to see you all in July.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Sami. Thank you, Rodina. Thank you, Kiki. Thank you for joining us. And pick up the phone and call us. I'm here this week. So, call Putney. We're happy to talk to you about Oxford Academia, or if you want to learn more about University of Siena or American University of Paris, don't be shy. Have a great night.